What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Surf and Sales podcast. It's been a minute. I have been down and out for the last couple of weeks with COVID, which I got for the first time, and it has been terrible. Richard, you're the king of COVID. You've had it about 16 times.
No,
what am I doing wrong? How come I can't get over it?
I don't know. You're like the biggest isolationist I know. Like, you don't like to go out and meet people. You don't like to go out and see people. Did you get it at the Travis Scott show? Maybe was that?
No, that was too long ago. I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened. It served me well. I've been safe for years, but this is only the second day I've been capable of human communication so far. So,
well, I'm glad to see you.
Hope that I deliver. I see your brand new book all over the place. Seller's Journey, everybody.
Yes. So it is coming out. When's it coming out? February 22nd. But for those who download and listen to this immediately, it's actually on Amazon right now. But we're going to do a big launch February 22nd, The Seller's Journey. Thank you for bringing it up, Scott. I hope my display is not obnoxious behind me, but I'm sure you'll.
It's a pleasing color to the eye, as I would say.
There you go.
Good. It looks good. I got my copy yesterday. It's behind me somewhere on my bookshelf. Yes. Yeah. Well, we're here today with the CEO and co-founder, I should say, of Grow.ai, Alex McNaughten, coming all the way from New Zealand. I believe that's where he is right now, which means it's probably about 4 or 5 in the morning. So he's a trooper. What's up, Alex? Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, guys, for having me on. And it's not quite that early. It's 8 a.m. actually, so it's
not bad.
Civilized. Yeah.
Oh, that's normal.
Yeah. Geez,
that's totally normal.
He's just as awake as Richard.
Maybe. That's right. Although one of our calls, Scott, was at about 3:30 in the morning when we were first getting to know each other. So that is one of the negatives of being in this kind of field.
So I just want to make sure I understand this. So people don't know that, Alex, you've hired Scott on as a consultant, right? As I recall.
He's
not really close.
Advisors,
right? So I just like the fact that this is how Scott operates: is that someone wants his advice to be a customer to pay him money or give him equity, and Scott makes them get up at 3:30 in the morning. And that is typical. If you know Scott Leese, that is his genius. He will make that happen, and I still can't figure out how he does this. So,
I think Alex is maybe used to it, considering where he is in the world, that he's got to make some sort of accommodation sometimes. So tell everybody real quick what Grow is all about, man. What you're working on.
So Grow AI is a team management co-pilot for sales, and it is. We built it to solve an age-old problem, which is that management and coaching gaps are the biggest barriers to consistent sales team performance, and we're making it easier.
Yes, 100%. That is the problem, and it has been that way for decades, as we said before we jumped on here.
Yes.
Where is the moment where you're like, this is the challenge that I'm going to solve, and I'm going to solve, you know what I mean? Like, what was your epiphany?
A lot of reps. So I kind of accidentally built a sales and go-to-market focused consultancy starting back in 2018 and worked across about 130 companies. Everything from pre-revenue through to corporate and everything in between. And then I also built a sales training and sales recruitment company here in NZ. And through the process of being around so many sales organizations and seeing this common challenge again and again and again, I just kind of got obsessed with it. And then when I met up with my 2 co-founders at the start of last year, it was just this beautiful moment in time where AI can start to do things that typically only people could do. And we set up to solve the problems.
Got it. So walk us through a little bit about how, if you can, and I know, we don't product pitch, but I've got questions related to this. What does it do? So it listens to a call and then it coaches a rep. Is it that simple? Is it more than that?
So the short answer is no. Think of Taylor, our AI, as an extension of the sales manager. Okay, so Taylor has one-on-one conversations with the team members where a manager can't be there all the time. So imagine you've got a team of 10, Taylor runs one-on-ones with every single team member and is also available on demand to prepare for a meeting or debrief from a call, and just answer the questions that you typically go to your manager around. We then analyze and draw insight from those conversations that Taylor is having with the team to surface both individual and team insights and highlight areas that that manager can then put in place the right intervention to bring up performance, highlight a gap across the team. And then from an executive leadership perspective, it gives them visibility across the sales org. And one of the big challenges at like a CRO VP level is that you just don't have visibility at what's going on at an IC level if you've got 100, 200 sellers across the org.
So, and then Scott, you can ask a question. So what this is really telling me is that it's going to show me how sucky my CRO is at actually providing feedback, because even when Taylor AI gives my reps feedback, how do I as a CRO make sure the rep's doing the job? Therefore, or the CRO still doesn't know how to actually have a conversation with that rep when it comes down to the human side of it, right? So does it call out the rep more, or does it call out the CRO for their crappy leadership style?
Look, the idea is it rises everyone. And if we, maybe if we step back a second and put ourselves in the position of your typical frontline sales manager, they were probably the best seller maybe 6 months before. And then someone said, hey, you're now leading the team. You've got 10 direct reports. They got a pat on the back. Here's the number. Go hit it.
Agreed.
No one ever gave them any sales management training. No one shows them how to coach.
Right.
And, as a result, they typically revert back to what they're good at, which is dive into deals, sell. And, that unfortunately doesn't scale very well. And that's what the fundamental problem that we're trying to solve is how do we give frontline sales managers superpowers, and then also make sure that their sellers are getting regular expert coaching that's relevant to them.
That part I love. I love the fact that a rep can get all this stuff. I'm wondering, it'll be an interesting, and this is where it should start, right? Is at the level you're at of like getting it to the reps, get them the coaching. It'll be interesting to see how it builds on top of that to get to the management level, the VP level, while maintaining sort of the humanity of it all. But I don't know, maybe everybody's okay being coached by a machine and I'm just an old man.
It's interesting, right? So Taylor helps the manager as well because it surfaces things that they didn't know were going on across their team. So I'll give like a real example that happened recently is Taylor surfaced across one of our customers that in one of their sales team, they had John, a sales rep in that team, who was outperforming, but was running a slightly different process to everyone else. Their manager wasn't really aware of this because this manager had, I think it was 9 direct reports. And Taylor highlighted this and then made a suggestion to that manager, hey, why don't you get John, this rep, to show the rest of the team what he's doing? Like run a lunch and learn. So then the manager then was like, okay, cool, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. Facilitates that lunch and learn. John shows the team, and then the following month they had a record month.
That I love. That's what I wanted to know. How does it help the manager and leaders get better? That's brilliant. So cool.
Richard, you said something interesting that is fundamentally flawed. That I
always
point out.
Go for it.
Well, you said maybe you're just old. You don't like the idea of being coached by a machine, but that's actually false. We've been slowly being coached by machines without realizing it. And this is just a natural evolution of it. You think about, I don't know how long ago this was, but remember the first time you went through an automated phone tree when you called in to some doctor's office or something like that?
Right.
That's the machine coaching you where to go.
Right.
Remember when you used to have to write directions on a piece of paper or use a map, Richard? Well, you've been coached by a machine via Waze or Google, Maps or whatever, Apple Maps or whatever.
Right.
This is already happening in other areas of our life.
Yes.
So it's not that foreign of a concept, or should not be that big of a leap to suddenly think, oh, wow, I'm going to get sales advice.
Yeah. But you know me, Scott, right? Do you think I'm going to take the advice of a machine?
Well, first of all,
Richard,
you don't barely take the advice of anybody. Like my point is, all of us have been coached by machines already in different areas of our life. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a leap especially for people who are maybe newer into sales or into their careers, or who are growing up this way already, and this is all normalized, right? So it begs the question for me of, at what point does the middle manager disappear? Because I don't even need them necessarily. If Taylor, the AI, is coaching 47 of my reps simultaneously, they're all getting attention. I've got intelligence put in there, and it's, mining this wealth of data every single day of what works, what doesn't work, what do I want them to do and whatnot. And it's reporting back to the CRO or the VP of sales with those insights that they're not getting right now. How long until we don't need a middle manager, sales manager type person who I think we all agree is often struggling to deliver coaching and value both to the reps and up? So where does Alex sit on that kind of fence, that dynamic that I'm talking about?
So I think if we look short to medium term, this gives middle managers serious leverage, is what it does in the short to medium term. I think there is a potential future here where you reduce the number of frontline managers you need across an organization, and actually free up that headcount to be out there selling and doing a lot of the time what they're best at and what they like doing more. I think, can it fully replace a layer of management? I'd say maybe, but where AI is less good right now is at the kind of random stuff that happens across managing a team. The stuff that's not systematic and programmatic and can fit in a nice, neat process. The random things that just happen with people management. I think that's where fundamentally you'll need some people, is to deal with that.
So what he's saying is, when I need to leave early because someone's sick or the cat has to go to the vet, Scott, is Taylor going to let me go? Is Taylor AI going to let me go to the doctor? Right?
Yeah. Well, the current state of AI doesn't have the capacity yet to have that nuanced conversation, right? But it's interesting what Alex said. He's like, well, short and near term, it's a boon for the sales managers, which I agree. But is it a Trojan horse? Because it's like we get in with this short near term boost, but watch out, because in 5 years or 10 years, you might be gone because we don't need it, that middle layer anymore, because the AI has progressed to the point where it can have that conversation with Richard about his cat and understand the emotional element of it, and understands Richard's personality and knows when to push, when to support, that type of thing. I mean, to me, that's the natural direction that we're headed.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think Scott's. I think you're going to be patient too for Neuralink from Elon, right, Scott? Because you actually, Scott, for all things, Scott has this capacity to understand the human at a really unique and specialized level that I've always admired. And you're right. Once we can get that level of what's the word, satiency or whatever, that sentient. That'll be an interesting point of view. But Alex, how far away are we from that, do you think?
In some aspects, we're already there. So Taylor's already having emotionally charged conversations and handling them better than.
Can you give us an example of one of these kind of nuanced emotional type conversations that Taylor, the AI, is pulling off?
So imagine a very frustrated, stressed out rep who's actually hitting their number and doing really well, but just burnt out, angry at the world, angry at her boss, angry at the systems that she's working with, et cetera, and basically
I call that Tuesday.
Well, exactly right. Like maybe that's a lot of people's lived experiences all the time. But imagine that person having a rant with Taylor and Taylor navigating quite an emotionally charged conversation and handling it better than I've seen most humans do, which is somewhat creepy. But, managing that conversation, asking the right follow-up questions, bringing the emotional level kind of down in the conversation throughout the conversation. And then also with some, what's the word? Useful, practical feedback, thoughts towards the end as well. And then surfacing those insights to the leader around, hey, this person's actually a retention risk and they're really good, so you need to sort that out.
Can it sense that? Can it sense that, wow, Richard seems tense based on his email situation, how he's talking to customers, or does...
Like anticipate, you're talking about anticipation.
Yeah, or do I need to go, hey, Taylor, I'm feeling stressed today. You got any advice?
This stage, it will pick these sorts of things up in a one-on-one conversation. I think what you've described is, pattern matching and what's the word? Prediction is where this ultimately can go. But for now, it's reading cues in a conversation.
How does that make you feel, Richard, that this is already happening?
And it's interesting because me in mental health. It actually makes me feel good. It actually makes me feel like this is the support that I never got and you never got, a lot of us never got, that's available to them. So it leans me in a little bit more that's available. My next hesitation is, now it sends it up to my CRO or whatever. And, then my concern is, how does the CRO know to have that conversation with me as being a potential flight risk, which they still don't have. But I can see where one begets the next, right? The more this stuff comes up, the more someone learns. Like I've said this a lot about the AI is that, you can go into AI and say, teach me how to negotiate with procurement. And you read it and you learn it and you use it and then you do it. And then you're starting to get better skilled at it. So that's the part I see that I really do like about this. I think I'm just, afraid of the machines taking over.
And that's totally fair. And
yeah,
I think more people should talk about that or admit it and think about what that world is like. It is a different world. It's a different world in building a company right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to build a company, in particular, like the revenue growth, sales, marketing, CS, all these things? How is it different right now than, the times that you did it before?
So I think there's a few things. I think the constraints seem different with building this sort of company because it almost a lot of the time it feels like there aren't any on the technical front in terms of what we can do. Now, I am blessed. I've got two incredible technical co-founders, one of whom's a published ML researcher and, a master's in machine learning and machine intelligence from Cambridge. And then the other who's a data scientist and engineer. So, kind of that's the context for when I say it doesn't feel like there's that many constraints in terms of what we can build. Because they're just very, very smart people. But in terms of, the other sides of the business, I think business fundamentals are still important. Like you still have to, you still need a go-to-market plan and distribution and all the things that were relevant with all types of companies and that have been relevant for a long time. I think candidly, we're fairly early in that journey. So we've only been charging folks for the last 2 months. So we're really figuring out some of these areas right now in terms of go-to-market, in terms of what does customer success look like with a platform like Taylor, there. But yeah, I think the short answer here is some things are different on the product front for sure. But in terms of like the other sides of the business, a lot of that's quite common. I think actually probably the final thing is there's some really interesting ideas and feedback we've been getting around folks asking us, can I put my way of doing things into Taylor?
Oh yeah,
we've had that conversation with another. Well, like we Scott, we've had that conversation.
Yeah, we had that conversation.
That seems to be that's a common conversation we've had with a lot of both.
Imagine Richard, you program the seller's journey.
I've already talked about it.
Style and the methodology you teach, and that's what your license of Taylor AI.
Scott, have you figured out? Do you know what you would do with that? Have you figured that out? Because I already have.
Well, I'm not sure where you're headed.
If you were going to take that, put all the Scott Leese stuff, all the advice you've given, all the things, how would you leverage that monetarily? Because I have the answer.
Well, give me the answer then.
Give me the answer is that everybody who wants to call and pick my brain for $20 can talk to my AI me.
That's right.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Like I won't charge you time.
That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So, and you're not limited by time either, right? Yeah. Because you can have 100,000 of those conversations happening at 12 p.m.
Yeah. Right. So one more idea that I come up with that Scott will probably go and do better and faster than me.
Well, somebody smarter than both of us will figure that out.
I just got to figure out who will build it. I just got to figure out, I need Alex to tell me where I can find a good engineer on the cheap.
Like we're already doing this in a company context where we're ingesting playbooks, and this is how that org sells, and this is who they sell to, et cetera, so that Taylor is not just broad sales expert, but relevant in the context of that space. And one thing we are definitely keen to start experimenting with throughout the course of this year is then giving Taylor all kinds of context, like what you guys are both talking about there.
Yeah.
And figuring out what does that look like in the context of an organization. We have really well sorted. I think how you just talked about it, Richard, there, that's I think something separate.
Yeah. I mean, the easy,
a little different.
Yeah. I mean, for me or for Scott, it's the biggest way to look at it is that career advice. That's the one I get the most. I think Scott does, and then startup advice or founder advice, so, anyway, so because I've got it all written. There's 500 podcast episodes of us. There's countless LinkedIn and blog posts and books, and it's not that hard to theoretically do it. I just don't know how to do it. So I just need a smart person. So anybody listening who wants to partner with me, I'll give you 51% of all the revenue. Seriously, I don't need to make decisions. You can have more than half the revenue.
It's pretty good. That's a pretty good deal out there for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. So
careful, you're going to end up with a full-time job, Richard.
No, that's why you give away 51%.
That doesn't mean you're not working full-time for 49%.
That's a pretty substantial equity stake.
So
yeah, 49 is a good chunk.
So I want to shift, Alex, and I know we talked a lot about what y'all do, and I hope everybody understands this was not a paid product pitch. I think it's fascinating, and it's a topic none of us are talking about, so it's massively relevant. I want to understand, where did your entrepreneurial spirit come from? What was little Alex like? What would mom and dad say? I said, when did you know Alex was going to be a successful entrepreneur? What would they say? He was 5, and he...
Oh no, God! For a while, they probably would have said, "Oh, we're not sure about him. He's messing up a bit here." When I was at early days at university, I was studying finance and accounting and bloody hating it, and quite lost. And then, but my dad is an entrepreneur, and he's had his own business for decades, and so I think he's probably he's definitely instilled some of that in me. But yeah, I fell into sales at 19. And completely by accident, applied for an internship at a tech startup and ended up being their first sales hire, and that's where I fell in love with it. And then it was really, my early entrepreneurial journey.
Pause right there. Pause right there. What did you love about sales? Because I think this is for so many people. I'm the opposite of someone. People fall into sales, right? And they fall in love with it. What did you love about it? What was it that was like, oh, this feels good?
Well, it was sort of a love-hate thing at first, because my very first experience of selling was, is some phone numbers and email addresses of construction companies around New Zealand. Go call them. We want to sell them something. And that was really it. And, you know,
Scott, he got phone numbers and companies.
Not fun.
We had to find them on our own.
I know.
Yeah, that's true, right? Like, I was blessed. I was pretty blessed. But, you know, I find it really hard, and I'm a natural introvert, and putting myself out there like that, I found really uncomfortable. But I sort of got addicted to it in maybe a masochistic way. It's like, you know, taking a lot of the no's but figuring out how to do this and teach myself this skill. And then, you know, I got addicted to the success that, you know, the first org I worked at, we kind of did a crazy 0 to 2 mil run in the time I was there. And I built a team, and had, I think it was 12 people reporting to me by the time I left. So I really just got addicted to figuring out problems and like solving problems, and just hyper learned from there.
What do you mean by hyper learned?
I suppose what I mean by that is
like it came to you very fast, like you just got good at it quick.
I don't know if I'd say it came to me really fast, but I like actively from a very young age would be out there reading, trying to speak to anyone who's, you know, 2, 3, 5 steps ahead of me. And
student of the game,
just consciously. Yeah, like consciously doing it, I suppose, not just on autopilot. And then, you know, back to your original question, like entrepreneurial spirit, like my very first business was an accident. It literally happened because I had a few startups in my network who needed some help, and I helped them. And I was doing it on the side of a day job at the time, and then realized about 4 months in that I was earning more money from this than I was my day job. After I had, I think, maybe four clients or 5 clients. And then I was like, oh, wow, like New Zealand sucks at this. Let's see if I can help.
New Zealand sucks at this. That's hilarious, right?
There is
what I do, and I mean, I say it with love. I love New Zealand. I'm half New Zealander.
It's a real thing, right? That your part of the world is a little behind our part of the world in terms of adopting new technologies, new strategies. Yeah. Right? This is not just hyperbole.
No. I've talked about this at length, and like in New Zealand, even culturally, sales is I think hard, because New Zealand is a fairly understated culture. People don't like tooting their own horn. And, you know, and in sales, like sales is not that, but like there's an element of it at times. And I think Kiwi culturally struggles with it. But yeah, like in terms of adoption, I think it's one piece of technology a Kiwi company will have for about 4 or 5 that a US company will have in their sales org. And, you know, sales training, investment, etc. is like way down. And, you know, what I've noticed, and you know, God, I've been across so many orgs in this part of the world, is that most of them are just not even doing the basics that a US startup would be doing.
Mm.
So that's lead gen for Scott and I to get down to New Zealand. And
yeah, that's right. You get
out. Surf and Sales New Zealand.
Totally.
Yeah, we'll be there in 16 hours.
Right.
Just clean up.
Yeah. So, you know, what are the fundamental pieces of advice that you try to give the humans, right? Like, I get the concept of how to have this conversation or those things, but what are the pieces if someone can't afford Grow AI right now, right? Like that's totally fair. What advice do you try to give managers who've never had coaching or training, or what advice did you used to give to managers? Because I want to make sure people walk out of here with like something they could actually use. Tangible.
So I think there's so much amazing educational content out there for free. Mm-hmm. And, there was some incredible books that I read throughout my journey that I was recommended, for when I was a seller. Like the Transparency Sale was, from a seller's context, is one of my favorite books, or The Transparent Sales Leader, both by Todd Capone. And the reason actually I mentioned Todd is he was my very, very first podcast guest back in, I think, 2019. And he was like the first US sales guy who like gave this random Kiwi kid a chance when I was, I think, 25, 26, whatever it was. So I think there's so much information out there, and I think, ChatGPT and all these other tools make it even easier to access good information. Now that is a double-edged sword because there's so much. But yeah, like be active about it. Like follow folks like you on LinkedIn and listen to the podcasts and like be deliberate in terms of leveling yourself up. I always say this to like new sales managers or, because folks ask me about advice, like, what do I do? I've just been promoted. I don't know what I'm doing. I say, well, if you're not getting the coaching internally in your org, like you're just going to have to create that yourself. You're going to have to take charge of your own development.
Yeah. I think that's really good advice. Mm-hmm. If you're not getting what you need where you're at, you've got to go get it somewhere else.
Yeah, you have to. And like I've had both extremes. I had like amazing mentors early in my career, and then equally I had not so amazing bosses, and I didn't stop learning in both those scenarios. I was still learning, even if my manager wasn't giving me what I needed.
Yeah. Well, how can we be helpful to you, man? What kind of questions do you have maybe for us that we can try to answer?
Yeah, you guys have been already helpful massively offline. So but firstly, a massive thank you to you both. I think one of the actually, here's a question. It's more of a fun question, but our team's moving out to the US later this year, and we're trying to figure out where to be.
Oh, you're trying to figure out where to move?
Yeah, like at
Austin. I would not come to. So
you
have a challenge. Austin. Well, here's what everybody I think is. San Francisco, quote unquote, is the hub. It's the hub of the AI. All the AI companies are here.
That's our default,
expensive, right? It's just expensive, right?
Right.
And so, and Austin's got a great startup community. I think they're beyond this. Maybe startups will do it. There's enough people around who have skills in various parts of sales and marketing and IT and tech and all those kind of things. I don't know the AI infrastructure. I don't know Scott's your guy. I'd love you to be here so I could go hang out with you, right? I don't get to hang out with Kiwis, but I think San Francisco's obviously a default.
Yeah.
New York's a default, but towns like Nashville and Austin and other places I think are doing great. I mean, Scott, what do you think?
Well, I think that San Francisco and New York are and will probably always be the hubs of everything, and the biggest and best place to go for startups if you want to be around lots of founders, lots of venture capital people, lots of people with that kind of mindset. But there's massive trade-offs because, like Richard said, it is super expensive for one thing. You can get lost in the sea of millions of people out there as well, and can be a little hard to make a name for yourself, perhaps. So default to me is San Francisco, New York. Right after that, I think it's difficult to argue that places like Austin or Boston, Massachusetts would kind of fall next in line in terms of places to go. Both of them have great startup scenes, talent hubs, and whatnot. A little bit less expensive. After that, you really, it depends what you're looking for personally and what you're trying to do. Like, are you going to have an in-office culture? So if you're trying to build a team of 250 people in an office, building AI, working on tech, you might not want to move to Boise, Idaho, or Fargo, North Dakota, right? If you had planned to have like a distributed kind of team all across the US or all across the world, and you're trying to optimize for, cost of living,
runway.
It's like close distance everywhere. It's like short flights wherever you want to go, so you don't have to do any cross-country flights and stuff like that. You want people working across all time zones. Then you have to think about those kind of things. But to me, there's really like 4 major cities that make sense. And that's San Francisco, Austin, New York, and Boston. I don't know how anybody could argue with those 4.
Yeah.
And there's lots of other ones that, to me would be kind of a tier below that stuff.
Like, I think you could do Seattle. I think you could do Atlanta. Also, Chicago, maybe. But, again, I agree with Scott. Those are sort of the places you probably end up. And I agree with him that, are you going to have an in-office culture or a remote culture? Because that opens the door dramatically in terms of where you decide to go, because then you can make a lifestyle choice to some degree.
But I'm not sure how much it matters anymore. That's the interesting thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
To be like, if you want to raise money, you better move to San Francisco, and everybody move to San Francisco. It's not that way anymore. Damn near every like mid-major metropolitan area has a cluster of venture capital folks and universities, and a lot of people have left places like New York and California, right? A year or so ago, everybody was like, Miami is the place to be. That's going to be the new like hub. All the startups are going to Miami, right? So you've got people who've kind of made their money and made their mark in California or New York or place, and now they've left and gone, elsewhere. So access to these folks is just a lot easier now with normalized. I mean, you could raise money over Zoom. You don't have to fly.
That's what I was going to say.
You don't have to fly to
you're more open to it.
San Francisco to go to Sand Hill Road. So
right.
There's a lot of questions, I guess, that you just ask. What do I want my company to kind of be like, and what makes me and my co-founders like happy? What are we looking for?
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's a point of like, to the point of what makes you happy, and then talent. And I think the talent is now democratized and dispersed, right? It was harder to find that talent, for Google, and, the cool thing about a Bay Area or, an Austin or New York or Boston is that there are people who do want to leave the big companies and go take their shot and take their moonshot. And so there's value to having a little bit of close proximity, particularly at an early stage, but, you don't have to sort of look at like talent as a big driver. Like, I think a big piece, people came to the Bay Area, that's, Sand Hill Road, Silicon Valley, that's where it started, has the legacy, but I also think that's where the talent was, and just like everything else, that's now democratized.
More, unless, like I said, you want to have a 100% in-office culture, and you're planning to hire 250 tech workers, you're going to have a much harder time doing that in small town, middle America than somewhere else. Right. So
good food for thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate you getting up early and spending some time with us. Alex, tell everybody real quick where they can get a hold of you and learn more about Grow and Tailor the AI and what you're up to.
Sure. So grow.ai is grw.ai. And for folks who've listened to this and want to give it a go with their team, either reach out to us on the website or reach out to me on LinkedIn, Alex McNaughten, and happy to give you a trial to experience it for yourself. And best place to find me probably is either LinkedIn or Twitter, which I'm less active on, but you use a little bit.
Cool. Sounds good. Do we even have to say LinkedIn anymore? Where should you find me? You know where to.
Yeah.
I feel like we have to. We've been coached by the machine to tell you.
Talk to or familiar with.
Yes.
There are people out there who don't use it though.
They probably don't listen to us either.
Or that's also true. That's also true. Thanks so much, Alex.
Thanks,
Richard,
Alex.
We'll see everybody next time on the Surf and Sales podcast. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
See you, everybody.